Hi everyone, I can't believe I'm actually sitting here with a cup of tea because, that's not really my style. But I've been losing my voice a lot when I film, and I think this is going to be a slightly longer video. So I thought that some tea with honey might help me get through it. I don't know what's going on with me. Maybe it's like the air quality or the weather, fate. Maybe I'm just out of practice. So earlier in the year, I went through that list from Time Magazine of the 100 best fantasy of all time, or, whatever it was. And I got the feedback a lot on that video that it was fun and all, but that I didn't give enough of my own personal opinion on whether those were the 100 books that should really be included in, the greatest fantasy of all time. And the truth is, I don't actually care about these lists very much, but I think they can be kind of fun to look at. Like, I will always click on them, even though I don't put a lot of value in them. Kind of how I am with awards. Like, I do the whole Hugo Awards reading project. I'm doing it for the second year now, and I don't really care about awards. But it's something to talk about. It's fun. So today I'm going to be looking at NPR has your 50 favorite sci-fi and fantasy books of the past decade. So that should be interesting. So I will look at how many of these I've read, and I will give more personal opinions about whether I think these are the 50 greatest sci-fi and fantasy books of the past decade. So this was done, reading through this article, it looks like it was a combination of a reader poll, and then they had some expert judges decide who, make the final decision on what was going to make the cut. So let's take a look at the judges. Hopefully this actually opens up on OBS. I'm not very confident with that. This is only maybe my third time recording with OBS ever. So the reason we're looking at the judges is because I am going to predict that we can confidently expect all of these people to show up with their works on this list. And I understand why they want to have experts. I think having authors and critics on these panels probably makes these lists a little more, shall we say, like awardsy than what we might get if it was purely audience voted, because I think a lot of times people that are maybe very current in the genre or who are writing, they have their own ideas about what's the most noteworthy, and it might not be the thing that's the most popular. That's fine. I don't actually have a problem with that. So we have el-mohtar. The only thing by her I've read was This Is How You Lose the Time War, which it mentions here, which is co-authored with Max Gladstone. That was a novella. Did that win the Hugo Award for Best Novella last year? I can't remember. I did enjoy it. We have Anne Leckie. I enjoy her work. Tochi Onyebuchi, who the only thing I've read by him is Riot Baby, which if you saw my wrap-up, that wasn't really for me. And we have Fonda Lee, who wrote the Jade trilogy. What's the official name of that trilogy? I started Jade City. Wait, what's the first one? Is Jade City the first one? I started that and I wouldn't even say I DNF'd it. I just wasn't in the mood for it at the time, and I never continued, and I've never gone back to it. But I know people really like her books. So I bet we're going to see all of these authors show up on this list. And, I don't think they're picking their own books, but I think that when you are on a panel with some other authors, and it's probably if their works show up on, your audience voted stuff, it's probably very polite to pick the works of your co-judges. And obviously they've picked very distinguished writers as well. But still, I personally, if I was in charge of the universe, I would say that anyone who is judging should just have their work excluded from the list. That's what I would do. They would be ineligible, and you can just note that at the beginning, and we can all go home happy. So let's get on to the list. I'm gonna have some tea first. Because look, our very first thing is by Anne Leckie, who's one of the judges. Actually, I think this is a great book, though. I'm not complaining. I think they said they are limiting this to one book or series per author because it's only 50 works in this list instead of 100, which I guess they usually do. I really liked Ancillary Justice. Is it in the top 50 sci-fi and fantasy of the past decade? Yeah, sure, why not? I actually really like her fantasy book, The Raven Tower, which has gotten much less attention, and maybe if she had not turned down the nomination for the Hugo for The Raven Tower, maybe more people would know about it. If you are into the idea of a Hamlet retelling in second person, where the narrator is a god that's a rock, you should check out The Raven Tower. But yeah, I did like this trilogy. This is the pictures of the first one, but they're talking about the whole trilogy. Sure. Then the Dead Djinn universe. Oh, and I forgot to say, they have these sorted into different categories. And so for them, this is the world building category, I guess, like authors with the best world building. Is that true for this trilogy? Yes and no, because it's like it's a very confusing setting that you feel like you kind of start to understand. It's, I guess, if you are into like atmospheric world building versus world building where everything is actually explained, then yeah, this is a pretty crazy world. Okay, so sorry, the Dead Djinn universe. I have been wanting to read this. I have not read it. I did think out of all the Hugo novellas, which I didn't like any of, Ring Shout was by far my favorite. So I definitely am interested to read more by P. Jelly Clark. And I feel like the stuff about Jinn and set in Cairo, that sounds like more my pace. Okay, Joe Abercrombie. Oh yeah, I forgot to say, I mean, we said the last 10 years. So I think any series listed here it needed to start being published after 2011. In or after 2011. So I have not read any Joe Abercrombie. I don't feel inclined to read any Joe Abercrombie, but I know a lot of people love Joe Abercrombie. People love his characters. Isn't he known for characters above world building? I mean, I know he's like the grimdark guy, but anyway, I certainly can't complain about Joe Abercrombie being on a list like this. Then, okay, the Green Bone Saga. I told you that was going to show up, but I guess that is the official name of the series. Again, I started the Jade City. It didn't feel like it was for me. I will maybe I'll try it again at some point. I'm not sure if it's going to be a little darker than my taste. I just wasn't in the mood for crime families, I think, when I picked it up. Oh, this thing is guilting me. I have not seen the TV show of The Expanse. I read Leviathan Wakes last summer because The Expanse was nominated for the Hugo Award for Best Series. It was okay, very readable. I said I was going to continue the series and I still haven't, so I guess actions speak louder than words. I've heard the show is very good and I do want to watch it. I don't find much time to watch TV. I guess this has been pretty big, right? Like I can't complain about this being on the list. Was it my favorite? No, but that's fine. Okay, now I'm going to give them major points for the Day of Abad trilogy, one of my personal favorites. I adore this series. I think the world building is great. I love the fact that it's this fully built out Middle Eastern mythology and folklore based world. It's not just like Arabian Nights flavored. It really there's a ton of research on this clearly. And, she really draws on myth and folklore from many, many different Middle Eastern cultures and traditions. And yeah, I love this series. And yeah, I love the next series too. A Memory Called Empire and A Desolation Called Peace, two of my favorite books from the past 2 years that I read. So yeah, I'm really into Arkady Martine so far. And yeah, can't complain about that. The Thessaly trilogy by Joe Walton. I generally like Joe Walton. I've been meaning to read more Joe Walton. I have not read this trilogy, and I kind of would like to. I've seen it around. I don't really know that much about what it's about. Here it says, Apollo, spurned by Daphne, is trying to understand free will and consent by living as a mortal. Athena is trying to create a utopia by plucking men and women from all across history and dropping them on an island to live according to Plato's Republic. This seems kind of interesting. I don't know. Okay, now we have the Shades of Magic trilogy by V.E. Schwab. I have the feeling this was definitely like an audience-voted one that made it onto the list because nothing, compared to some of the other ones, nothing groundbreaking here. I enjoyed this trilogy a lot. I enjoyed the first one the most. The second one, was sort of contrived. Third one was also kind of contrived. I don't think V. Schwab is necessarily my pace. Addie LaRue was, no. But I enjoyed this trilogy a lot, but best of the last 10 years, I don't know. I feel like there are at least 50 other better books than the Shades of Magic trilogy. Is it a fun fantasy? If you just want to read some fun, pretty typical fantasy trilogy, yeah, it's really fun. Go for it. But yeah, I don't know that this place is earned because I just don't feel like there is anything special in that series. The sort of magic setting concept, alternate London thing from the first book, yeah, kind of cool, but you get over it quickly. Now we have the Divine Cities trilogy by Robert Jackson Bennett. I have been wanting to read this trilogy. I haven't read it. I'm very intrigued. I really liked his book Foundry Side, and then the second one in that series, which the name of the second one is escaping me right now, but it was still good, but there were some things about it I didn't really like. I will keep reading that series. I've been meaning to read this series. It's just not at the top of my TBR priorities at the moment, so I cannot express an opinion. The Wormwood trilogy. So Rosewater. Okay, I read Rosewater because this was nominated for the Best Series Hugo last year as well. I read the whole book. I reviewed it. I have a review up of this. I could not stomach it. Excellent writing. There was some body horror in that book, and that's not for me. So I didn't read the whole trilogy. I can't really evaluate, is this in the best, sci-fi of the last 10 years? People certainly seem to think that it is groundbreaking and influential. I think it's cool. It's set in, future Nigeria. Sure, no complaints. Okay, I have a complaint. I most definitely have a complaint. Black Sun. I liked Black Sun. I have a review up of Black Sun. You can go check it out. This book came out was it November or December 2020? I don't know how long this series is supposed to be, but this is book 1. It just came out. It's incredibly incomplete. Yeah, the world building and the setting were really good. I think that was the best thing about the book. The book ends on a giant cliffhanger. Who knows if this is going to be any good? Is just having cool world building in a, sort of pre-Columbian America inspired setting, that is great. I'm all for it. Is that enough for it to be on the list of the 50 best science fiction and fantasy of the past decade? That doesn't make sense to me. It's too new. There should be at least one other book out so we can sort of judge how the thing evolves, because it was just very incomplete. Okay, now we are on to Words to Get Lost In. Okay, no complaint. I think Piranesi was a great book. I read it twice. I read it, and then I listened to it on audiobook. Yeah, I really like that. I really enjoyed Circe. I think I've heard people disagree as to whether this should be considered fantasy or not, but I feel like, to me, a Greek mythology retelling is fantasy, I think. I loved Greek mythology from when I was really little, and I think it's definitely the same part of me that just enjoys fantasy and science fiction anyway. If for some reason you haven't heard of this book, it's a retelling of the story of Circe. It pulls from a lot of different myths, and what I really liked about it, as well as the way she developed the character and what it would be like to be this immortal nymph, but also she took a lot of lesser known elements of mythology and then brought them together into a coherent story, and I enjoyed that. Mexican Gothic. Well, technically horror, I guess. I think Silvia Moreno Garcia is a fantastic writer. This is probably the book of hers that has been the most successful. Again, for me, writing was great. Too much horror. The end kind of freaked me out a little bit too much. I wouldn't reread it, that's for sure. I'm really enjoying some of her other books. This seems fair. Would I have loved to see one of the books that I personally enjoyed more on here? Yeah, but that's just personal taste. Okay, The Paper Menagerie and Other Stories by Ken Liu. Come on, guys, couldn't you have put The Dandelion Dynasty? I don't even read short stories, so I haven't read this. I'm not going to read this because I don't like short stories, but I mean, maybe this is a great short story collection, but come on, he has this epic fantasy series with like amazing world building and amazing everything. Go read The Grace of Kings if you hadn't. I really need to make more videos about this series. I'll get to it. I mean, okay, this is just personal outrage, but I do like his writing, so maybe that's really unfair. Should have been the Dandelion Dynasty, though. Okay, Spinning Silver. I like Naomi Novik's Temeraire series. It started coming out before the last decade, and I don't think it is that groundbreaking. I stopped reading Spinning Silver about halfway through, and I haven't tried to read Uprooted. It had some controversy. I actually enjoyed reading A Deadly Education earlier this year, which is her new series. I thought it was fun. There's been various controversies around that book, though, so I like Naomi Novik's writing in general. This book, fairy tale retellings are not always my thing anyway, so yeah, I know a lot of people have liked this. I keep saying I can't complain. I mean, I can complain if I want to, but I have to save the energy for complaining about things I care about more. This I've never heard of. Exhalation Stories. Have I heard of this author? I think this is completely unfamiliar to me, but I don't read short stories, so I'm never going to know. If he didn't write a novel, I'm never going to get to know his writing. Alondria series. This, I think, showed up on that other list of the top 100 fantasy of all time, and I didn't know what it was then, and I still don't really know what this is. Is this like for children or young adults? When was it published? I like their description here, but yeah, I don't know. Her Body and Other Parties stories. Why so many stories? Who reads fantasy and science fiction for the short stories? Apologies if you are one of those people. I like tomes with lots of world building and slow pacing and all that. So this is about the lived experiences of women. Sounds like probably some sort of magical realism. Doesn't sound, yeah. I don't know. No, I don't know. The Buried Giant by Kazuo Ishiguro. I hope it's good because I've been meaning to read it for a really long time. Ishiguro is one of my favorite writers, although not particularly for his science fiction or like more fantastical works. But I really need to read this book. It's still on my shelf. I've been meaning to read it for so long. But yeah, cool. I mean, at least I know I love this writer. Radiance. I have heard of this author, Catherine Valente, recently, and I'm not sure why, but it seems like this is, well, obviously, according to the description, it's space opera. I haven't read it. Maybe I should read it. All right, now we are on to the category of We'll Take You on a Journey. Let's have some more tea. I feel like I have heard of this book. Haven't read it. Haven't read anything by the author. No opinions. Wayfarers. I do like this series. If you like books with a plot, you probably won't. Luckily, I'm fine with books, character-driven books with no plot. I like books that are plot-driven, but if I had to choose between a book that's like all character and a book that's all plot, I'd choose character. But, a balance is good too sometimes. There were 4 books in this series. The second one was my favorite. I liked 1 and 4 pretty well. 3, no, it was just, I think it went too far towards the plotless. No, they're all equally plotless. I think 2, the one I liked the most, had a little more plot and just had the most interesting concepts for me. But yeah, I think a lot of people, I think this is also one of those books that was self-published, then got picked up by a publisher. So yeah, I like this. Binti by Nnedi Okorafor. This is a novella, which is part of why I haven't read it yet, but I've been meaning to read this as well. Out of the things that I have read by Nnedi Okorafor, I liked them. So I have this, again, in the TBR pile somewhere. Ooh, now we have Lady Astronaut. I really enjoy this series. I think it's definitely my favorite, group of works by Mary Robinette Kowal. The third one, which was the title has moon in it, but I always get the title wrong. But anyway, I have really enjoyed the whole series, especially the third one, The Relentless Moon. Does that sound right? I have a review up of that, whatever it's called. It was one of my probably favorite books last year. So yeah, I think this is a really cool series. Approved. Children of Time Duology by Adrian Tchaikovsky. I know very little about Adrian Tchaikovsky. I've seen this author around. I know it's science fiction. Does he have a fantasy series too? I just don't know anything about it, and I've seen these big books by him and thought maybe I should check that out. I just haven't. I do find just the last name a little bit funny. For those of you that don't know, I'm a classical musician. For those of you who don't know, there's an extremely famous classical, well, not classical era, but whatever, composer named Tchaikovsky. So, maybe I will get to this at some point. I would like to. Oh, no. My Old Friend, the Wayward Children series, which I just read all of in pursuit of completion for the Hugo Awards this year because number 5 out of 6 was nominated for Best Novella. So I read all 6 and didn't know. Yeah. I appreciate the representation. I appreciate the message. It just the stories do not speak to me. And if they speak to a lot of other people more than they speak to me, then I guess this deserves to be on the list. But I do not like it. The Space Between Worlds. Have not read it, but I'm going to be reading it in the next few months because Micaiah Johnson is a finalist for the not Hugo Award for Best New Writer. So this is her debut novel, I think. So I'm planning to read this and then I'll have an opinion. But I have heard a lot of people say they liked this. Black Leopard, Red Wolf. I think I started this, but it wasn't even a DNF. I got maybe a couple pages in and just decided it was not really for me. So again, I don't really have an opinion, but it says, poll judge Amal el-mohtar once described Black Leopard, Red Wolf as like being slowly eaten by a bear. Yeah, maybe that's what I was feeling. Maybe that's why I didn't keep reading the book. Southern Reach. I've never heard of this. I don't really know anything about it. Well, pass. The Echo Wife by Sarah Gailey. Haven't read this. I have not liked anything else I read by Sarah Gailey, unfortunately. So this wouldn't be on nothing by her would probably be on my top 50 of the past decade. But I don't know. The novel I read by her, Magic for Liars, I really didn't like. And the novella Upright Women Wanted that I read this summer for the Hugo Awards novellas, I just don't really like novellas, but as novellas of that kind go, it was fine. So I don't know if I think probably 2 works is enough and I should just accept that that's not my author. Ooh, now we have Gideon the Ninth. Okay. Is it the best? I don't know. Did I love it? Yeah. Am I super excited for the next one? Yeah. I think they just announced it's actually now going to be a quartet instead of a trilogy, which is kind of sometimes alarming when an author does that, but also it means there will be more of it, which I'm all for. And also it did seem like there was going to be a lot to wrap up in one book. I have so many questions about this series, but yeah, I mean, this is one of those books where it's not for everyone, but I was in love with it from the first paragraph, and that's just it. Remembrance of Earth's Past. So the 3-body problem is the first one. I haven't read this. Actually, my friend Daniel listened to this audiobook, I think earlier in the year or the end of 2020. And I can't remember if he thought the book was boring or just that the narrator wasn't good. But yeah, it definitely didn't make me want to read it. But I know this is supposedly an influential book, so we'll let that go. Machineries of Empire by Yoon Ha Lee. I really liked this series. I think it's As a person that enjoys being confused, I think this was one of the most confusing things that I've ever read in my entire life. As in, I read this whole story and I felt like I understood it, and I still just didn't know what was happening half the time. And I'm not sure if that's just intentional or it was just me, but I thought it was pretty cool though. It was a very cool, I would have put this one in world building because this was a very cool, weird setting. Okay, the Broken Earth series. Yeah, I mean, of course this has to be on the list. It won a Hugo for, well, not that awards are everything again, but like obviously this is a hugely influential series. I think her use of second person in this book really inspired a few other people, and I've actually realized I enjoy things in second person. So this is actually the only series by N.K. Jemisin I've successfully completed. I've said this before, I think N.K. Jemisin is a great writer. I just personally don't always enjoy the way she tells stories. I think she tells very epic stories in very personal ways. And for the Broken Earth series, it totally worked for me. I really liked it. For basically all her other series, I always read like the first book or two and then just taper off and just lose interest. Station 11 by Emily St. John Mandel. I think I've heard of this. I don't know anything about it. This Is How You Lose the Time War. Yeah, okay. I think, have we had all the judges now? We had Anne Leckie. Now we have Amal el-mohtar. We had Tochi Onyebuchi. Didn't we? I'm losing track. Anyway, I think we might have all the judges now. Yeah, we had Fonda Lee. Cool. Now we can rest happy. All the judges have had their works represented in this list, so that's how we know it's a good list. Oh, how long did that stop recording? Crap. All right, guys, sorry. I just noticed my camera had switched off, but I don't think it's worth trying to figure out where I got to before it switched off and going back and re-recording. You have my voice, you have the screen capture, so it's going to be okay. You didn't get to see me for a minute. I'm sure I was very funny, but we'll just keep going. So I had just gotten to This Is How You Lose the Time War. I actually really enjoyed this novella. It was nice. Not like my favorite, but it was nice. The Poppy War. Okay. Enjoyed the first one, although it traumatized the heck out of me. Second one also traumatized the heck out of me. The third one I forced myself to read, and I hated every minute of it, and I hated myself, and I hated the book. Sorry. I thought we were going somewhere, but it turned out to just be a miserable world where absolutely every single character is absolutely awful. They're all terrible to each other. None of them have any sense of decency or proportion. And, I don't mind a book about an anti-hero, but a world where everyone is just a total piece of garbage? No, didn't enjoy that. I think there were a lot of mixed feelings about the last book, actually, but was this influential? Yeah, definitely. Does it deserve to be noticed? Sure. Do I regret reading it? Maybe a little bit, but I don't regret reading the first one. I just think I should have, when I had such a hard time making myself start to read book 3, I should have just acknowledged, like, okay, you don't really want to do this, clearly. Okay, you don't have to read it. It's okay if you don't finish it. But instead, I pushed myself through, and it just wasn't a great experience. Okay, The Masquerade. I read the first 2. I think the third one came out recently. The Traitor Baru Cormorant is the first one. Very dark, very messed up. I think my husband liked this even more than I did because it's very like political, twisty, manipulative, and he likes that kind of story. I liked it too, but I kind of got bored in the middle a little bit. And then the second one, I felt like the author, I felt like he just didn't know what he was doing with it. It was like pointlessly dark and twisted, but it didn't really go anywhere at the same time. So I haven't read the third one. I haven't seen a lot of people talk about this, really. I'm curious, was this a judge pick? I'm not sure. But yeah, I don't know. Mixed feelings on this. Because I did like the first one okay, but I just now kind of want to like bleach my brain from the whole series a little. An Unkindness of Ghosts. Definitely heard of this. I generally like to read it. I haven't read it. I also haven't read this next one, The Bird King. Sounds interesting. American War. Haven't read it. Okay, I jumped the gun. We hadn't gotten to Riot Baby. We hadn't gotten to Tochi Onyebuchi, but now we have. I talked about this a little bit in a wrap-up. I'll talk about it more if I finally film my video about Hugo novellas. It started out seeming more like magical realism and then just kind of turned into like, I don't know, a more, not post-apocalyptic, but like dystopian story without really any explanation or a warning. And yeah, does it belong on this list or not? I feel like I can't really be the one to say that. On Fragile Waves, I had this on my holds at the library and I checked it out and I just didn't get around to reading it, but I don't remember really what it's about, but clearly I saw it at one point and wanted to read it, so maybe I should. The Goblin Emperor. Yes, I would totally, absolutely put this on my list of the best books of the last decade. This has become one of my favorite books of all time. I just filmed a review of The Witness for the Dead, which is not the sequel, but another book in the same world that Catherine Addison just came out with. The Goblin Emperor, I think it's the first book I ever reviewed on this channel because I had read it, maybe in the month or two before I started the channel. I have so much love for this book. It's amazing. If you like slow character-driven books with lots of names, you should read it. Murderbot. Okay, I just read the first one. I really enjoyed it. I feel like I'm gonna love the rest of the series. I know everyone loves Murderbot. Well, maybe not everyone, but a lot of people seem to love Murderbot, so seems fair. The Interdependency. I read the first book and really, really liked it. I need to read the next two for the Hugo Awards project. So, yeah, I can't really speak to the whole series. The first one was really fun. I enjoyed it. The Martian. Yeah, I love this book. I really enjoyed the movie, too. I enjoyed Project Hail Mary, if you've been meaning to get to that. So, yeah. I mean, this was very popular. I think it makes sense for this to be on the list. And then, finally, Sorcerer to the Crown by Zen Cho. This is on my list of books I would like to read. I think a Regency romp with squabbling magicians, romance and intrigue with women and people of color center stage. That sounds pretty awesome. So what do I have now? I think that's it. Just have some notes. Oh, one final note. Usually readers will vote at least some works by members of our judging panel onto the list, and usually we let the judges themselves decide whether or not to include them. But this year I put my editorial foot down. All 4 judges made it to the semifinals, and had we not included them, the final product would have been the less for it. So you'll find all 4 on the list. And we hope you enjoy going through it as much as we enjoyed putting it together. Well, thank you. I did enjoy going through it. And, like I said, I understand this position, but personally, I still wouldn't have included books by judges. Just pick judges that are readers and not authors or something. I don't know. That would solve their problem. But honestly, there were definitely a lot of things I really like on this list, like a lot of my favorites. So I was pretty open about my feelings on most of this. I hope you guys enjoyed the raw honesty as my voice got raw from talking for this long. Let me know what you guys think of this list or what you guys think of my opinions. That's always fun to hear. And until next time.